We've all watched Trump's threats and tantrums from a distance, scrolling past headlines about Greenland like it's just another diplomatic spat. But what you are not seeing in those headlines are the real people whose lives have been turned upside down in ways you wouldn't expect from a supposed ally. It's also real soldiers who kiss their loved ones goodbye and prepare their final words in their wills. It's real emotional distress and fear.
Nu frygter vi ham. Vi frygter ham alle sammen.
Because while the world debates Trump's latest outbursts, Danish soldiers are kissing their children goodbye, some with sealed wills in their pockets. Greenlandic families are packing their lives into suitcases, fleeing to Denmark, and children in Nuuk asking their parents why there are suddenly soldiers everywhere. This is the story nobody's telling you about the human cost of Trump's Greenland obsession. I'm Stephen Nikander Højlund, a Danish social science PhD reporting for the Danish Stream news channel. You can read news from Denmark in English on thedanishstream.com completely for free. Now, let's get into it. First, let me paint you the picture of what's actually happening on the ground right now. And it's important to be clear about one surprising fact. Neither Russia nor China has ever threatened any part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Let that sink in for a while, given the latest events. The first nation to threaten Danish sovereignty with a potential military force wasn't traditional adversaries. It was our NATO ally. On January 17, 2026, President Trump posted on social media that he would impose 10% tariffs on Denmark and 7 other European allies, raising it to 25% until they agreed to hand over Greenland. He refused to rule out using military force. Now you might be thinking, come on, he's just bluffing, it's just Trump being Trump, he's just trolling. But here's what you need to understand about how we think in Denmark and in Europe in general. When any world leader makes a direct military threat against your territory, you take it very seriously. And that's every single time, because the cost of being wrong is unthinkable. And because he had just kidnapped another country's leader in Venezuela, well, there were good reasons to be a little bit concerned, I think. So what did Denmark and Greenland actually do about it? Within days, Denmark launched Operation Arctic Endurance. It was already planned, but it was rescheduled to happen a little bit earlier. 200 Danish soldiers were deployed to Greenland, reinforcing Joint Arctic Command in Nuuk and Kangerlussuaq. And here's the part that should make your stomach turn. These soldiers arrived with live ammunition and the standing order to fight and defend the kingdom, even against a much stronger adversary. Again, not Russia, again, not China, against the United States military, the most powerful fighting force on the planet. Major General Peter Harling Boysen, chief of the Royal Danish Army, stated publicly that his forces were ready to defend Greenland. Think about what that means for a moment. Danish fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters kissing their families goodbye, knowing that they were being sent as a tripwire force. So essentially they played the role as human shields. Some prepared wills, some had those difficult conversations with their children about what might happen, because in Denmark we had to take the threat seriously, so everyone had to prepare for them. This deployment could last 1 or 2 years even. Now let's talk about the people in Greenland itself. Greenland has a population of 57,000 people. It's a tight-knit society where everyone knows everyone, where life moves at a very different pace than the rest of the world. So what happens when geopolitical chaos suddenly lands on your doorstep? While we don't have statistics showing a mass exodus yet, we do have reports from families fleeing to Denmark. One family interviewed by Danish broadcasting described leaving Nuuk because their children were experiencing stomach aches and trauma from the tension.
Altså, for et år siden, der grinte vi jo bare ham. Altså, vi grinte af ham. Altså, han er jo, det kommer jo ikke til at ske. Altså, hvordan skulle det kunne ske? Altså, du er jo fuldstændig bindegal. Nu frygter vi ham. Vi frygter ham alle sammen.
Imagine trying to explain to your 8-year-old why there are suddenly more soldiers on the streets, why mom and dad are anxiously watching the news every night on TV, why people are talking about that America is going to invade and annex us and life is going to be completely different afterwards. And those were the ones supposed to be the good guys. For context, the US has maintained a small presence at Pitufik Space Base in northern Greenland, fewer than 200 personnel running missile warning systems essentially. This has been a stable cooperative arrangement for decades. But Trump's threats changed everything. And here's something even more unsettling. Reports suggest that Greenlandic authorities have asked residents to increase their emergency readiness by stock supplies to survive for 5 days. In Denmark, it's only 3 days, and we're preparing for a Russian invasion. This is 5 days. This is not preparation for a natural disaster. This is preparation for what might happen if the geopolitical situation spirals and Trump decides to use the 11th Airborne Division to assault Greenland. It's the only division in the US Army trained in Arctic fighting, and they can be asked to be ready to deploy in 4 hours. Currently they are in Minnesota, but you just never know. So let's take 2 steps back and ask one simple question. Why would Greenlanders flee to Denmark rather than see America as an opportunity? How bad would it actually be to become an American? And why are some fleeing to Denmark? After all, isn't America the land of opportunity and freedom? Well, here's the reality that Americans have a very hard time to understand. Unless you're in tech or another high-earning field that would allow you to be sort of top 15% in the United States, becoming American would be a downgrade for many Scandinavians and also Greenlanders. There's no universal healthcare in the US, there is expensive education, there's less job security, there's low-paying jobs, there's high crime rates, and you can add fear of random and unlawful detention by federal agents like ICE, etc. So for the average person living in Greenland, moving to the US or becoming a US citizen would mean less safety, less support, and more uncertainty. There is really no upside. Denmark offers free education, comprehensive healthcare, and a strong social safety net. Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, so Greenlanders are Danish citizens with full rights to live and work anywhere in Denmark. They even enjoy special rights with free choice of education that is not dependent on their high school grades, and Greenlanders don't need to serve in the military. So it's pretty much a no-brainer. And that's exactly why some families are very worried, because there's a lot at stake here, there's a lot to lose. And let's for a moment bring this back to the people. The soldiers who left their homes, the families who fled Nuuk, the children asking questions their parents struggle to answer. These aren't statistics, these aren't chess pieces on a geopolitical board. These are real human beings whose lives have been fundamentally disrupted because of one man's fixation on acquiring territory. And here's what makes me a little bit angry about this whole situation. We've become so numb to Trump's bombast, his threats, his disregard for norms, that we scroll past headlines about Greenland without really absorbing what's actually happening. We think, here goes Trump again. But for the people living this reality, there's no scrolling past it. It's every day, every time you get up, every time you go to bed, you're afraid that next day you wake up as an American, essentially. For them, there's only the stomach-churning fear of what might come next. The sleepless nights, the difficult conversations, the life-altering decisions about where to raise your children, and all of this, all of it was avoidable. Denmark was and has always been a willing partner. Greenland's government was open to dialogue about increased cooperation. The strategic objectives could have been achieved through diplomacy. Instead, we have Danish soldiers with live ammunition preparing to fight their own allies. We have the NATO alliance on the brink of collapse. We have Greenlandic families fleeing their homes. We have children traumatized by something they can't fully understand. This is the real human cost of Trump's threats on Greenland. And it's a story that deserves to be told, shared and remembered. If this video opened your eyes for what's really happening in Greenland, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to understand the human consequences behind the headlines. Because these stories matter. Real people matter, not just Trump, even though he would like it to be that way. And the world needs to know what's happening in the far north while everyone's looking the other way. Thank you for watching.